What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another edition of Pistons Daily, where you can find content covering all things Detroit Pistons all year long. I'm your host. My name is Kyle Garrison. I'm over on Twitter at Kyle Garrison2, where I talk all things Detroit sports. So head over there, give me comments, questions, concerns, episode ideas. I'd love to hear from all you guys. Also, shout out to everyone who tunes in every single day. We are on the road to 2,000 subscribers, so if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way to help support the channel. With that being said, let's jump into episode 77 and a victory edition of Pistons Daily. Obviously, the Pistons just secured 2 wins over the weekend. On Friday, 115-111 over the Rockets in their first win of the season, in their second game overall. And then they turned around, went back home, and on Sunday, the Boston Celtics came to town. They beat the Celtics. I believe it was 119-113 final score to improve to 2-1 after what was a just lackluster effort against the Bulls. They really responded. They bounced back in a lot of ways. So let's just talk about both of those games. And I know you guys will be seeing this on Tuesday. The Pistons do play Monday night. So I'll be recapping Monday and Wednesday's game in Thursday's episode. So stay tuned for that. Obviously, with the back-to-back on Sunday and Monday, I wanted to get out a video talking about the 2 wins over the weekend before I dive into Monday's game, because as soon as I start combining all of them together, they start to mesh. But there was different games or different things from different games that I wanted to touch on. There was some themes that were consistent over the 2 games. There were some themes that weren't. So let's just talk about overall what went well in game 2 of the season. So that was the Houston game. First and foremost, you won. You got your first win of the season. And that Rockets team is very, very good. You went into their place in their home opener, and you came out with a win. They're a new-look team. They added Kevin Durant. They traded for him this offseason so they could get that bona fide number 1 scoring option, and he was very good. He had 37 points for the Rockets, but the rest of the team really didn't do all that much. I think that the overall defense outside of Kevin Durant in allowing him to get to the free throw line as much as he did was incredible. And when you're looking especially at what happened in that game, you lost Jalen Duren right away. He was ejected for elbowing Amen Thompson in the head. That's an area we'll talk about in what needs improvement, but that happened. So you get your starting center is ejected automatically. So that's Isaiah Stewart and Paul Reed now are your only 2 centers really left on the roster that can, you can feel comfortable about going in and playing at the 5 position. So then you had to deal with that. And then Isaiah Stewart fouls out late in the game. Karis LeVert and Jaden Ivey are out. Ron Holland ends up fouling out as well in only 13 minutes of action. So you're completely depleted. You have 5 of your 10 bona fide role players or guys that were going to get some consistent minutes going into the year. About 5 of them were not available down the stretch of that game, including Ron Holland and Isaiah Stewart. So the fact that they were able to come out with a win just goes to show that this entire team, when they go into maybe a game where they probably would have expected to lose 2 years ago, they now have the confidence they can beat just about anybody in the NBA right now. The Houston Rockets are a team that people expect to be a top 3 seed in the Western Conference. You went into their house. It wasn't a pretty game whatsoever. You played suffocating defense. You did what you needed to do down the stretch to secure the win. It's exactly what they did. So just overall, love the energy that they brought. But let's just dive into defense specifically. I wanted to just talk about what I loved about it. And like I mentioned earlier, yes, Kevin Durant had his 37 points, but the Rockets scored 111 points. You held them to 38.6% from the field. They shot 48 free throws, They made 37 free throws, but when you're looking at their efficiency from the field, it was just horrendous all night. You held the Rockets to just 15 assists on the night compared to your 26. 15 assists is ridiculously low for this NBA right now with the three-point shooting and the amount of shots that teams get up. 15 assists is nothing. So great job there. You were taking away people's first options. They don't have a bona fide ball handler right now with Fred VanVleet out for the year, I believe. It's Amen Thompson running the show, really, and he's a good ball handler and he's a good facilitator, but it's not enough, clearly. So you held them in check. You made them try and score in isolation, which is great. Alperen Sengun was 5 of 18. He just put up 39, 11, and 7 against the Thunder like 2 nights prior. You held him to 5 of 18 from the floor for 17 points. Jabari Smith was 3 of 14. Reed Shepard was 3-11. And my personal favorite, Amen Thompson, 2 of 8. 0 steals, 0 blocks. He wasn't an impact defensively. He had 2 turnovers. He had 5 personal fouls. It limited his time of, he was available to be on the court. And you really just clamped up the entire supporting cast around KD. So just absolutely love the coaching, love the energy, love that everyone's bought in defensively. It clearly showed against the Rockets on Friday night. And then when looking at what went well offensively, you made 16 threes. I mean, I talked about the floor spacing, but you made Houston respect your perimeter shooting, and it opened up everything. 16 of 39 from 3 as a team, and it really just allowed Cade, and if you saw Asar and even Ron a little bit in his limited time on the floor, they had room to attack. And I think the biggest difference between Friday and Wednesday's game was that when the Bulls, when Cade Cunningham was attacking downhill, the defense was already collapsed. On Friday, the defense had to respect Duncan Robinson and Ron Holland and Isaiah Stewart and some of these guys that maybe they weren't going to respect last year, but they do now. And instead of the defense already being collapsed when Cade and Asar try and make a drive downhill, the defense is a little bit more spread out, and they're a little bit more weary of the guys I mentioned, like Ron and Isaiah Stewart and Duncan and some of these guys that are consistently making threes. And so now it opens up the ability for, yes, Cade will get the defense to collapse on him, but when they do, it's going to be a lot harder, and they're going to be all coming in from a different direction, and that opens up spots to kick it out, find open shooters. The defense will be too late to recover. That's what happened on Friday night. It was excellent all-around offensive performance, especially considering how depleted you were. Obviously, there was a lot of room to grow, which I'll talk about here in the next segment, but I mean, Duncan Robinson was 4 of 8 from 3 for 17 points. Asar Thompson was ridiculously good offensively, was hitting threes, was knocking down mid-range jumpers, was getting to the cup, was finishing a little bit at the free throw line, more so on Sunday than anything. But I loved what we saw from Asar Thompson. I loved what we saw from this offense overall. Cade had his struggles and had his moments here and there, but when you have other guys that step up, you don't have to rely on Cade so much like they did last year. So very encouraging to see some other guys step up on the offensive side of the ball. And then Asar Thompson again, 19 points, 2 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 stocks, 9 of 16. He had his first three-pointer of the year. He's growing in front of our eyes. You're watching him become the player we know he can be in front of our eyes, and it's very, very fun to watch. And then the last player that I wanted to touch on for what went well, Paul Reed. 13 points, 9 rebounds. I believe he only played like 15 minutes. He had the game-winning block, essentially, the game-sealing block on Alperen Sengun with about 15 seconds to go. And just big play after big play from Paul. I just love that we brought him back this year as a third center because he's always ready to go no matter what. That was the case again on Friday. So shout out to Paul Reed. And then let's talk about just what needs work after Friday's win. And yes, there can be things that need improvements after a win. That's going to happen a lot this year. That's why we talk about what went well, what needs work, regardless if it's a win or a loss. And Cade turnovers. The Rockets defense is super aggressive on ball, but 8 turnovers is just too many. You got to clean those up. And if that's getting the ball out of your hands and letting Asar Thompson run the show a little bit more, so be it. He looked great doing that on Sunday. He looked great on Friday. And if you have to allow him to have some of those ball handling roles and play a little bit more off ball, that's not the end of the world for Cade Cunningham because he's good on and off the ball. It's just the fact that he was really the only consistent ball handler they've had the past couple of years. It's kind of an anomaly now that they have a guy like Asar where you can rely on him to run the offense and run the half court. And you'll get Jaden Ivey back healthy. Karis LeVert will come back healthy. Hopefully Marcus Sasser. Dennis Jenkins is getting more minutes. So there's just more ball handlers around Cade now. And so if it's going to cut down his turnovers, yeah, I'd love to see him kind of have the ball in his hands less and kind of lower that usage rate a little bit. Obviously, we still want him to run the show, but it is important that you have other guys around him to alleviate that pressure. And then Tobias Harris, he struggled from the field. He rebounded the ball well, but he's just trying to force things too much. And that's going to happen. He's not going to be able to dominate a lineup where 4 of the 5 players are over 6'10". He's a guy where he gets his mismatches against smaller guards and goes to work. But the smallest guy on the floor at times for the Rockets was Amen Thompson, who was like 6'7", 6'8". So very, very just not worried about Tobias. I know he's going to come back. He did on Sunday. He had a great game on Sunday, and I expect him to continue to improve on that. But against a Rockets team like that, he was just trying to do bully ball, trying to get his work in the paint and shoot over the top. It just wasn't working out. So got to see that improve. And then the game itself and the Pistons' performance on both ends was great. But my biggest frustration is just the ejections and the fouls. Everything else I really enjoyed. I loved watching the game. Jalen Duren, right after a technical foul for shoving Amen Thompson, you can't bring a high elbow to his head. Even if you didn't mean to, they're going to get you for that every single time, especially because the Pistons in the past have had Isaiah Stewart and they've had little run-ins with people, and they're an aggressive team, and they've got some guys on the team who like to show a little bit of emotion sometimes, and Jalen Duren just kind of got caught in the wrong time in the wrong moment and paid for it. So we need you to be on the court. We need you to be healthy. We need you to be available. The best ability is availability, and you can't get ejected in the first half of a game that big. And it didn't end up costing them too much, but you got to be smarter. And then continuing on, Ron Holland and Isaiah Stewart. Ron Holland, you can't foul out in 13 minutes of action. We need you to be out there. We need you to cause havoc. We need you to have minutes with Ausar Thompson. You're very, very good when you're on this floor when you're on the floor at the same time as Ausar. Stay out there. And then in 17 minutes for Isaiah Stewart, you can't pick up cheap fouls. You can't pick up the illegal screens. And when there's no contest on a shot, there's no reason to go in and try and get a piece, because it's just another way to pick up another foul. Again, you're a body that we need, especially against a team like the Rockets. So it was much improved on Sunday versus Boston. The max amount of fouls for anybody was 4, with Ausar and Cade both having 4. So they weren't limited really in foul trouble whatsoever, which is very nice to see. And speaking of that Sunday game, let's talk about that. So I know I just talked about kind of what went wrong in the Friday game against Houston, which it wasn't a lot. There wasn't a lot of things to talk about there. And that's the case again for Sunday's game. I mean, you get another dub. You kind of erase the Chicago Bulls game from the memories of a lot of fans. And not me, because I'm always going to kind of look back on that in case the Pistons do have some regression. But it was just very good to see that you beat two teams that are better than the Bulls. You went out and you beat two teams who are very, very good. They've been competitive the past couple of years. They have very good, talented players, regardless of injuries. And you got 2 wins. That's all that matters. And the biggest thing that stood out to me of what went well against the Boston Celtics on Sunday is they had 5 offensive boards and 8 of their 32 second chance points in the final 3 minutes of the game. Think about that. 5 offensive boards and 8 of 32 second chance points in the final 3 minutes of the game. That won them the game. That was it. You get those 5 offensive rebounds. That's too many chances to give to an opposing NBA team. Offenses are too good nowadays. And, I mean, it won them the game. 32 second chance points. I believe they had 15 offensive rebounds on the night. Honestly, I think it actually might have been more than that. Anyways, it was just ridiculous. Ausar Thompson was incredible on Sunday. I think it was one of the best games I've seen him play in his entire career. He was handling the ball well. He was breaking down the defense with his handles and his passing. He had 12 rebounds with 5 offensive boards, showing off the athleticism. He played 36 minutes, showing how impactful he is, showing that JB Bickerstaff can't afford to not have him on the floor. Love that from Ausar. And then pairing Ausar with another player, Ron Holland. The 57 possessions that Ron Holland and Ausar Thompson have played together this year, keep in mind, last year they played 267 possessions together. We now have 57 possessions. We have 20% of the overall sample size we got last year. We already have 20% of it through 3 games this year. And when they're on the floor together, they have a plus 38.6 point differential. They're scoring 135.1 points per 100 possessions, 100th percentile in the NBA. They're shooting 68.1% effective field goal percentage, top 100% in the NBA. They've allowed a 96.5 points per 100 possessions. They're averaging less than a point per possession. This team with Ausar Thompson and Ron Holland on the floor together is not only insane defensively, but offensively, they're unbelievable as well. They're turning opponents over on 17.5% of their possessions when they're both on the floor. That just doesn't happen in this NBA. Teams are too good at preparing to have ball handlers. They're too good at knowing how to not turn the ball over. But Ron Holland and Asar Thompson, the athleticism they have, the relentlessness they have, it's ridiculous. They are so impactful together. I mean, when you're averaging 135.1 points per 100 possessions on offense, and the other team's averaging 96.5 points per 100 possessions on defense, that's a 40-point gap. That is a 40-point gap right there. And it clearly it shows, because when they're out there together, whether it's hounding a guy on an inbounds play or making a play off ball, swiping it, getting it to Ron flies down the floor and gets a dunk, vice versa. Or Ron Holland makes a drive, collapses in the defense. Asar Thompson's on the backside for the rebound and the putback. Like, there's so many different moments in these games where you can just visually see how impactful both of them are. And you would think, yes, having them together would be a little bit chaotic, but it's not. They're both so fluid now, and they're just coming into their own. And it's so unbelievably fun to watch their progression together, because that is going to be a very, very scary duo going forward. I've heard people calling it 9 to 5. I love it. Get ready for your 9 to 5. Like, Donovan Mitchell, get ready for the 9 to 5 tonight. Like, this isn't going to be fun for you at all. This is going to be hell. So I might be totally jinxing it, and you guys are seeing this, and Donovan Mitchell went for 40 on Monday night, but let's hope that's not the case. But anyways, moving on, I know I just, got very, very excited, but you guys should too. If you go on Cleaning the Glass and you just look at their on-off numbers when they're both on the floor, it's one of the craziest things I've ever seen. And obviously we'll continue to monitor it. But again, 20% of the sample size we got last year, we already have through 3 games. Very, very encouraging. And then Jalen Duren, one of the best games I've seen him play in his career, 24 points, 17 rebounds, 7 offensive boards. Again, the Celtics have such a lack of center depth. Neemias Queta, Luka Garza, and Chris Boucher just aren't going to cut it. Duren was just dominant all game long, forcing fouls, was 12 of 13 from the free throw line. Love to see that. His defense even looks solid, especially helping on drives, had a couple of help side blocks. And that's very encouraging for JD. That's an area of the game we need to see him grow at. And he showed it on Sunday. So very happy to see that. And then Cade, he always is in the what went well for one reason or another. Again, the turnovers were a little bit of a problem on Sunday with 6, but this team is just so much better when he's confident and when he's getting to his spots. And yes, he missed some shots, and there were some moments where he could have capitalized on some different things. But again, he is underperforming, and he's still averaging 23, 6, and 9. Like, he's still so impactful, even when he's not scoring at his traditional clip, because he's allowing other guys to operate that offense and to find ways to score. And he's not relied on to as much, and we're still winning games. So just love to see that Cade has kind of turned up that consistency. He was more consistent this weekend than he was on Wednesday, and hopefully that'll start to continue to mesh as the season goes on and as we get into the bulk of the regular season. Tobias Harris, best game of the year. He matched up with Jaylen Brown a lot today, which is a very, very tough ask for a 32-year-old power forward. And he held his own. He made buckets down the stretch. He had a lot of rebounds as well. I think he had 8 rebounds, 2 offensive. So just doing what they ask him to do. Uncle T, always going to be a consistent piece of this lineup when they ask him to be. And that's kind of been the case so far in these first 3 games. Felt like the 3rd game on Sunday was where he really started to feel comfortable and kind of look like what he did last year, especially on the defensive end. But again, 54 team rebounds, 18 offensive. I said 15 offensive rebounds earlier. It was 18 offensive rebounds. And again, just like in Houston, you held the Celtics to 42% shooting, 33% from 3. I mean, we didn't really shoot it any better from the field, but being able to crash the offensive glass and limit the amount of uncontested threes that Boston takes, you will win games, especially against a team like Boston who relies so much on the 3-point shot. So the offensive struggled, but the defense was so good that it was able to kind of even things out down the stretch. And you were down 17 at one point in this game because the offense was struggling, but your defense found a way to get you back in this, allow you to get back on the fast break, create some mismatches and some just even strength numbers. You were running the floor with 3 or 4 guys at times, and Boston had 1 or 2 guys back, and not a lot of them want to jump with Ron and Asar and JD and Cade and these just athletic monsters that this team has in transition. So very good to see that they got the dub. Let's try and make it 2 in a row with the win on Monday, which you guys are seeing this on Tuesday. So hopefully we got the win yesterday. If we did or if we didn't, doesn't matter. I'll be recapping it on Thursday's episode. And then last thing before we wrap up, just a couple of things, what needs work. Again, it's no secret. There's a lot of work to do offensively. The defense has really carried the load the first 3 games of the season. But this offense is just trying to find how to navigate life without Jaden Ivey and Malik Beasley, Tim Hardaway Jr., Dennis Schroeder. Yes, Jaden Ivey is really the only one where you know you're getting him back, but you still have to figure out Malik Beasley, Tim Hardaway Jr., and Dennis Schroeder are all very, very good players. THJ is doing very well in Denver right now. Dennis Schroeder is cooking in Sacramento. Malik Beasley, I'm sure if he was playing right now, would also be kind of picking up where he left off. So you got to find a way to navigate that. That's going to take time. So that's just something that needs work, and I don't think that's a bad thing whatsoever. Your offense always needs work, especially when your team's this young. So expecting to see some more improvement there. And then Duncan, just more consistency. He had 4 threes on Friday, and then on Sunday he struggled. There's a lot of times where he's not getting his feet set, and his shots are very short. Over and over and over again. And that happened down the stretch on Sunday's game, and some shots that would have been massive to close things out a little bit earlier than they did. So just consistency from Duncan. And that's been a big thing throughout his career. The defense looks okay, doesn't look horrible. He's not unplayable because of his defense. But again, just that 3-point consistency definitely has to improve if we're going to continue to be a team that makes 15 3-pointers on a regular basis, because Sunday and Wednesday wasn't really the case. Houston's been the outlier so far. So hopefully on Monday night against Cleveland, they started to pick it up, and Duncan Robinson was able to catch fire. At least, maybe knock down 3 threes, 4 threes, just kind of get back to where we need him to be going forward. And then again, I already talked about Cade's turnovers and what needs work from Friday's game, but reiterated it here. 6 turnovers on Sunday. Guys, just got to be smarter. Got to have a tighter handle. Too many lackadaisical possessions where he's dribbling up the court and there's so much pressure around him, and it seems like he doesn't even notice at times. So that's got to improve. We'll keep an eye out for that. And then I mentioned the excessive fouling. That wasn't a problem on Sunday, so not anything that needs work. Just very glad to see that JB Bickerstaff reiterated the fact that we need you guys to be available. We need you to be able to play, and so he can run his rotations, so he can continue to figure out what's the best lineups to have out at certain moments in the game. And if your players aren't all available, then you can't do that. So glad to see that they cleaned that up on Sunday. But other than that, that's really all I've got. The Pistons take on Cleveland on Monday. Again, you guys will see this Tuesday, so you will know if we won or not. I'm really interested to see how this defense looks against probably the best offensive team they've played so far. Cleveland has Evan Mobley and Donovan Mitchell, who are 2 of the best offensive players. Evan Mobley on the defensive side too. 2 of the best overall players in the Eastern Conference and in the entire NBA. So going to be a tough task. And hopefully the Pistons are up to it. But that's all I've got for you guys today on episode 77 of Pistons Daily. As always, like, subscribe, comment, turn on post notifications, and follow me on Twitter at Kyle Garrison 2. Also, to head over to Spotify, leave a 5-star review if you can. It would be much appreciated. Once again, thank you all so much for tuning in every single day. With that being said, that is going to do it here for episode 77 of Pistons Daily. And I'll catch you all next time.